All right, I think we are all ready here. Today we're going to work on Octoprint. So got a Raspberry Pi over here. But before we do that, we're going to keep looking at our finishing techniques. I've got a couple new parts printed. This is our guy from last time, and I thought I'd show what I would do with this guy. So oh yeah, I did this. Sprayed him with adhesion promoter, which is probably not totally necessary, but I do it anyway. This is particularly for adhesion to plastics. Actually, I think it said, automotive plastics. And then sprayed him with this, just white primer. Probably could have gone straight to this. Probably doesn't have to be this particular type of white primer. It's just what I have, so that's what I used. This is what he came out like. So he actually came out really good, and I kind of wanted to go ahead and print him. He's kind of, or paint him, I mean. Kind of nice. I stuck him on a little plastic base and put some gravel down there just so it has something to stand on. But he actually came out really nice. And this is on a mostly stock that's pretty washed out. Let's see if we can get some shadows in there. There we go. Mostly stock. We just changed the fan duct is all we did. And I don't know that made a whole lot of difference, but that's all we actually did. And it was just one we printed straight off a Thingiverse, so it wasn't even a special like custom bought thing or anything. And he is printed at 0.1 millimeter layers, so he did take somewhere around 3 hours to print one little guy, but I don't know, he came out pretty good. You can still see, I don't know if you can see him on the camera or not, but I can still see, sitting here looking at him, little bits of layer lines here and there if we don't break him. But it's not bad at all. So what I would do next, if I were trying to paint this guy really quick, is I'd pick a color scheme for him. You know, you gotta figure out what color. I did this, not that, this. Went to colormine.io. I picked one color that I actually have over here, locked it in, and then you can just generate color schemes until you find a scheme that you're happy with. This one kind of looks good to me. It's got some browns for like the parts of him that are gonna have brown. Just got a little tunic thing, this wooden staff over here, and then a couple of other colors. You totally optional, just a way if you don't have a sense for what color to paint him. You can make them all random. I locked this one in as the one that I had picked out from what I had. Now on the screen, I'm looking at it and it looks really blue, versus the one in the picture for the web looks much greener. And that's just the camera rendering, probably because I turned the exposure way down. But this one is not nearly as blue as what it looks like on the screen. It is much more like what we see on the screen here. So who knows what it'll look like when we paint him. But anyway, I'm only going to do one of these colors today, and here's what I would do with it. I'm going to paint him in a really quick way, not anything that's going to take us very long to do. So what I would do is I would get some of this. This is already sort of stirred up. It looks kind of not stirred up. And make it really, really watery. So I've got some water over here. So it's really thin. Maybe even thinner than that. Yeah, there we go. So you can kind of see how you can see through it. And just paint him on. And I don't want a good coverage. I actually want it to do this for what I'm going to do. Where you can see the white spots showing through. That's what I want for the fast technique that I want to use. Now, what this doesn't do, since these are really thin layers of paint, is that it doesn't go in and fill in any of my layer lines. So if you're trying to fill in layer lines, then you probably wouldn't want to do this particular technique that we're going to use, because you are going to still see them. And I can see them in here. You can kind of see them popping through, but they're not bad at all, particularly for something on a FDM printer that is pretty much stock, other than the fan shroud. And the other things we have done haven't actually affected the print quality. They've all been things like we changed to a magnetic bed, so it's easier to deal with the bed and that sort of thing. But that doesn't necessarily affect the print quality. The one thing it might affect is that we don't have to worry too much, or haven't yet had to worry too much about parts peeling off as they're printing. So they pretty much stick down on that PEI. As long as you're printing PLA on PEI, and with the heated bed, it's pretty much going to stick where you print it, and you don't have to worry about them lifting off. In fact, I've got a part on there right now that I'm going to show you what happens to them. All right, so I would do this, and I would do this for all those colors, the different regions, and I'll do that. I'm not going to make you watch me do that because that's not necessarily 3D printing, but I would do something like this, and then let that dry, and we'll come back on Friday and do the next step for him, and he'll be all base coated. But I'm doing really thin layers, whereas other techniques you wouldn't do that. Here's what we're going to do. So maybe you don't want to print and paint little tiny guys. The other thing I decided was to get some experience with maybe well, we're shaking there. Metal textures, wooden textures. I am going to do Han Solo's DL44 blaster. I've printed up a couple of pieces, and there's some more printing in there. We've got this so far. So basically the handle. Actually, that's backwards. No, that was right. There it goes. So this is going to be all glued up. These will be painted to be wood here, and the structure in this center here will be a blackened metal look. It's all just brown PLA right now, though. We've got this piece that's still on the print bed. So here's kind of with the PEI sheet. These prints, they stick really well. PLA sticks really well. Now remember, something like PETG sticks too well to a sheet like this raw. You have to put something between it, either hairspray or glue stick or painter's tape or something. But PETG is going to stick too well to something like this. But once you're done and it's cooled down, then these things, they just, I mean, there's nothing to it. You don't have to do any scraping. You don't have to try and scrape on the thing. If it's something that is maybe like you print this guy on there, it's got a large surface area, then the nice thing about being able to take the bed off is you can flex it a little bit and pop that off of there. Even the brim doesn't take any, or the skirt, actually that's a skirt, not a brim. Doesn't take anything to come off of there. Other things that I've, oh well, let's show this. So I did have the issue with the very first one of these guys that we printed, the mummy. His supports, I didn't show you that, but his supports actually were really hard to remove. And then in Cura, I turned on the roof, and I went ahead and turned on the floor also, I believe, for this one. Maybe I didn't for this one. But you can kind of see this layer in here that looks different. Maybe you can see that. Yeah, you can see it there. There's a layer that's different in the support material. To me, that helps remove this stuff much easier. Now it'll probably not remove that easy now that I tell you that, but let's see if I can get a hold of it without destroying things. There it goes. So it just snaps away much easier to me versus trying to cut it away, or you can get your supports to remove much simpler if you tune and work on tuning the distance between your support material and your actual printed part, because they should just be able to snap away like that. I don't know if I can get these big old pliers in here to pull on. Well, there we go, like that. That's what you want your supports to do. You want them to stay in place, so you don't want super lightweight supports that aren't actually doing anything. You want them to stay in place while you're printing, but then when you're done with them, you want to be able to take something and just easily pull them out. See if I can get something under there so that they, you know, there's no residue left, nothing. You know, we have a pretty good surface here. These little wispy things, that would be taken care of with retraction settings maybe. I'm not worried about these. These don't bother me. You can either peel them off, or like I said earlier, you can hit them with a hair dryer and they'll basically just vanish. All right, so I'll finish that piece off. This is the hammer section, so it's gonna mount in there somehow. I'll probably have to do some sanding to get it to actually fit. It's pretty tight fit. Oh, I think I could. I don't want to put it there yet until I'm ready to, because it actually looks like it's a pretty tight fit to get all that to fit together. Then we're printing the breech, and I'll get all the parts printed so that on this one, I think part of it I'm going to use this. I'll probably try and at least record that, or maybe do some of it on camera so you can see how it works. It's a little bit messy to work with though, so I don't know exactly how I'll do that on camera or not. I might just record it and post it separately versus trying to do it live, because I don't want to try and clean up everything live. But I think I'll use some of that on this pieces. And so we're going to have metal finishes that we need to apply. We're going to use a product called Rub and Buff for some of these. I don't have any more right now, so I had to order some, so we might have to wait on that to come in, but there's several steps before we get to that. This is going to be a wood texture. So you actually can print, and I may go back and do that. You can print wood feel PLA, so PLA that has basically sawdust embedded in it. You can print that, and I might have enough of it to print these handles, because I think I just have a sample somewhere, but I think it's enough to print this. And if I do, I'll try and print that. The downsides of printing that are you have to print really slow. These, the way they are, I got them at 25% and I think 3 walls. Can we see the walls there? Yeah, you can kind of count the number of walls. I can see them. I don't know if they show up on camera. I have more walls here because I do plan on doing some sanding, so you don't want to sand through. If you had a single wall, you don't want to have to sand through that and have your infill showing. So I do have 3 walls for sanding, and 4 top and bottom layers for sanding. There'll be lots of sanding. But if I can get these to print out of the wood feel PLA, then they will have a woodish texture. They won't be solid wood, but it'll be nice. The downside again is you have to print really slow, and it's abrasive to the nozzle. I don't have a hardened nozzle on the Ender 3. I think I might can find one to put on it, and it doesn't wear them out immediately. But if you printed a whole roll of wood PLA or any of the types of PLA that have something embedded in them, that's probably gonna wear the nozzle to the point that it's not 0.4 millimeters anymore. It's larger, and then your prints are going to start behaving oddly. You're going to have unpredictable results. It could wear evenly, and so it's just a larger diameter hole, but a lot of times it won't wear evenly, and you'll have like an oval shape, and it's just hard to diagnose what's going on there. All right, so what we're actually going to do today, the Octoprint. Now I did print this case, then I realized that this particular case is for a Raspberry Pi, but it's a Model A. The Model A doesn't have all this USB Ethernet port on it. So it does, the holes still line up. It does fit in there, so I'm going to use it for now, but it puts these USB ports really close to pretty much not usable. So I'll have to come up with a different case. But you generally don't want to just set these on a surface that's conductive at all, because the bottom of these things is, all the pins are completely exposed. So you set it down on something conductive and you've just shorted out all your pins, and so it's probably not going to behave very well. So this will keep it up, or a piece of paper or anything. Just only if you have a metal desk or anything, you don't want to set them on top of that. You also need SD card. You need do we need this USB cable? I don't think. Oh, well, we will need this USB cable because the Raspberry Pi itself at some point is going to need to connect to your printer, and so you can connect most. I don't know if they all have this particular type of connection, but the Ender 3 does. So you do need a regular USB to a whatever USB, micro, mini, whatever USB your printer has. So the Ender 3 has, I think this is micro, or mini. I think this is mini. You also need a power supply for this thing. I'm not going to run it off of the the printer's power supply. You could, I don't want to do that right now. So you can power them with the, I think this one is micro. I may have all that backwards, but a USB here, it just needs 5-volt USB power. So I have plugged in off to the side. I have a USB cable that terminates in a wall plug, and the end we can use is right here. So we plug it in, and the Pi will come on. All right, I did put a couple of little heat sinks on here. It looks like they're kind of coming loose. I need some better way to attach them, but this chip does tend to get a little bit hot. Also, you'll notice on this case there's a spot for a fan, because once you enclose it, you do have a little bit of an issue with Raspberry Pis getting hot. So a lot of times you want to put some heat sink and get some air flowing across it. Right now it's just sitting out in the open. Even when it's in the case, the case is open. But if I ever close it up, then I want to do something better for the heat sink there. I don't want it to overheat this chip. For one, I don't want it to damage the Raspberry Pi, but also I don't want anything odd happening here while this is controlling the printing going on the printer. So we'll talk about that once we get closer to that stage of it. First step is you do need to get your SD card and put it in your computer. I guess that doesn't have to be the first step, but that, oh, I gotta put it the right way. One of the steps. Now this one already has Raspberry Pi on it, that SD card does, but we will, oh, this is important. Let's see, you probably can't see that though. Let me see if I can get it where you can see that. There, all right. So this message is going to pop up over and over for you when you have the SD card. After you've installed Octoprint on the SD card, it's going to think that when you put it into a Windows machine, it's going to think that you need to format this in order to use it, which is true if you want to use it as a SD card for a Windows machine, but we don't. The Raspberry Pi and Octoprint are actually going to be running on a Linux type operating system, and so we don't need to format this. No matter how many times it asks you to format this, do not format it in order to use it as Octoprint. All right, so what we do want to do is I go to octoprint.org, and then I guess that actually takes you over here is the home page. Right here is download, and there are they actually have kits you can buy from here. There's all over, where basically they throw together a Raspberry Pi, a power adapter, maybe even a case, and a pre-formatted SD card. You can just buy it. I don't know how much they cost. Oh, this is just asking to support Octoprint when I clicked on that. Huh. Oh well. There's the all-in-one kits. So here's some all-in-one kits. So yeah, they've got a case, the cables you need. This one has a camera in it. We'll add a camera to ours. Maybe we'll do that on Friday. We won't worry with that today. Any USB camera can work. Like, you can just use a webcam if you want to. We're going to use the Pi Cam. So it's a little, there's two versions, or there's at least two versions. One that's relatively new. That's an 8 megapixel camera. It's about $25. We're going to use the old 5 megapixel camera, and it's like $9 or something. So here's some kits that you could do. Let's see how much they cost. I don't know. They're kind of expensive. But this one does come with a, or well, it says optional, so I guess it doesn't come with that. The Raspberry Pi itself, you do have to be careful with the ones you're using. And it does, let's go back to the beginning here. Go to download. So it specifically tells you which ones. Oh, I don't think you saw any of that. Well, basically I just clicked on one of the kits that they had, and it was about $125. All right. Here are the Raspberry Pis that are known to work. Now this 4B, this is brand new Raspberry Pi. It hasn't had a lot of development for the OctoPi or the Octoprint software yet, and I think that even, yeah, this unknown compatibility to Raspberry Pi 4B and the 8 GB version. So I wouldn't use the 4B unless you just had it already. I wouldn't buy the 4B specifically for Octoprint just because it costs more, and it may not be 100% compatible yet. I don't know. I don't have one. So I'm using the 3B Plus. So there are other versions. There's much cheaper versions like this Pi Zero. You can make Octoprint work with the Pi Zero. The W means it's wireless, so Pi Zero W means it has a Wi-Fi built onto it. And it's much cheaper, like half the price. Now, the 3Bs are probably in the $20-something range now, so this is in the $10 range or so. But it's not quite powerful enough to run it. In fact, they explicitly recommend not using it on here. It will kind of work, but I would not use it, even though it's cheaper. I would use a 3B or 3B Plus, and I'm going to use the 3B Plus is what we have over here. So then you just download. You download OctoPi 0.17.0, and you get, let's see, you get this zip file over here. And that's all you need for there. Then they go through setting up OctoPi. So they tell you to unzip the image and install the contain.image file. I didn't actually unzip it. I just left it zipped, and then used Etcher. So if we click on Etcher, you go to this page. It's another little download. I don't remember how much. I think this OctoPi download was a couple, well, let's see. It is, yeah, 686 megabytes. So it's a lengthy download, not terribly long these days. And then the Etcher software is not a long download at all. But you download this, and you get Balena Etcher. So that will be, see, it's asking me to format it again. Let's see if we can run this. I agree. Oh, that's the install thing. I'll just install it again, I guess. Didn't need to reinstall it. This should also run it though, I think. There it goes. All right, so what this does is you don't want to just like use your file explorer in Windows to copy this, you know, what's inside here, this image. You don't want to just copy this onto the SD card. You actually have to flash it there. So you flash from file, and we want the OctoPi Buster Light, whatever, the one we just downloaded. Actually, here it shows it's 700 megabytes. So you want that, and they do say, but it goes and picks the image file out of that zip archive. I suppose you could unzip it first and then do it, but Balena will do that for you. Select target. Now you have to be careful on this. So this is telling where do you want this image to be burned. And generally, the Etcher is going to protect you a little bit here. It does show two hidden ones. These are hidden because these are your actual drives on your PC. So it's telling you, hey, this is a pretty big, you know, a 1 terabyte hard drive here, 120 gigabyte drive here. They're system drives. This is the one that the file is on already. You know, it's sitting on the desktop over here. So you probably don't want those. So it's kind of protecting you. You don't want to select those. You do have to have your SD card plugged in. So here I've got a 16 gigabyte. Now it's showing up as two different locations. That's because there's two partitions on this SD card. One that's a boot section and one that's the file section. So you select that. And then you would click flash. So we'll do that. Yes, I want to allow changes. And so it'll run through. Looks like we lost our screen there. There we go. So it's going to start. It doesn't take terribly long for this to go in and etch, although I don't know why it's taking so long to start. Oh wait, there it goes. So now the flashing process has begun. And also in the background, let's see if I can bring it up. Yeah, right here. It has asked me, I need to reformat this disk. Windows is going to, every time you put this SD card into the Windows machine, and even periodically, depending on what you've done, it's going to ask you to format that. Do not format it, or you'll have to start the process all over again. So we're at 17%. So this is the process of taking that image file that we have, that we downloaded for OctoPi, putting it on the SD card in a way that it will actually be read by the Raspberry Pi. Now the whole point, I don't know if it's the whole point, a big point of Octoprint and OctoPi in this case. OctoPi is just an Octoprint version that is specifically made to put on Raspberry Pis. It's already compiled and everything for you, so you don't have to do a lot of back-end work to get it to work. So the main point is that you are going to be able to remotely communicate with your printer. You can get on an iPad, another PC, your phone, and go to a web page as long as you're on the same local network. So in a minute, we're going to have to set up our network for the Raspberry Pi to connect to my wireless network, and you'll need to do the same if you are in a like an enterprise situation. Maybe you're at in a dorm room, or you're at work or something like that, and you want to set these up. It's a little more complicated than what we're going to do here, and I don't even know if it's worth trying to show you because every situation is a little bit different. If you're at home, this works fine because you probably just have a WPA type setup for your security at home. You just have a name for the router and a password. If you ever have a username, like it's your username and your password to log into the system, then what we're going to do here is not going to be enough to make that connection work. So it's a good bit more involved to get that to work. So we're not going to do that today. So it's almost done flashing. Then it goes through and it validates to make sure that it didn't actually, miswrite any data or anything. It's all there. And so you can see it doesn't take terribly long, 5 minutes maybe for the process. However long it takes you to download the image file to begin with, plus about 5 minutes of flashing. The etcher thing doesn't take long to download at all. You can see that it's by the time it's expanded everything, it's about a 3 gigabyte file. So you need at least a probably 8 gigabyte SD card. A 4 gigabyte would probably be okay, except that this SD card is also going to house your G-code files. So you want to have some room. Now G-code files are pretty small, but you want to have some room for those also on the SD card. So I think the one here was a 16 gigabyte. That one's probably a bit much, but 8 gigabytes would probably be a good size for the SD card. The one that goes on the Raspberry Pi. I guess there will be a SD card in the machine, in the printer itself, where the files can be stored. So they may not all be stored on this particular SD card now that I think about it. There are 2 ways to get files over to the printer. So one method is just to stream them to it. So the Raspberry Pi itself will send G-code as it's needed. That's a little bit risky in the sense that if the Raspberry Pi is ever slower than the printer, then the printer is going to pause and wait for the new G-code to come in. And that little bit of a pause is going to cause all these little bumps on your print. These little blobs and zits on the surface of your print. So I normally want to just use the Octoprint as more of a monitoring type thing versus a streaming the files, the G-code files to the printer from the Raspberry Pi, just because I don't want to risk having a slowdown somewhere and and having a little bit of a blob or something on the print. All right, so now we got that. That's done. Finish. Well, it's finishing. My printer's, my computer's telling me all these things about reformatting again over here that you can't see. I'm canceling through all of those. Now what we need to do is we need to find that SD card. So let's bring this guy over here. Now in here, it doesn't show up yet. So I usually just unplug it. Let's see it. Plug it back in, and here it is. Actually, well, all right. So and there's the reformat. I don't want to reformat it. Cancel that. It's not. That's fine. I don't want to reformat. So again, it shows up as both the boot sector and the drive sector or partition. In this section right here, I have all of this code, all these little pieces of code. I need to change one of these. So down here in mine, I don't know, maybe they're in alphabetical. Yeah, they're in sort of alphabetical order. Anyway, they're in alphabetical order by type. So in this last of these text documents, OctoPi WPA supplicant, this is where you go in and tell the Raspberry Pi how to log into your network. So I want to right click, open with, I'm going to edit it with Notepad++. If you edit it with regular Notepad or Word or anything like that, there's a good chance that when you save it again, even if you save it as a text file, .txt, then it's gonna, the piece of software you're using is gonna add in some extra header information that is gonna make this unreadable. So I want to use, I know that Notepad++, which is free, will not add in that header information, and this will work. So I'm gonna edit it with Notepad++. All right, so here's what you have in the WPA supplicant. So it gives you some, you know, basic different potential ways you can log in. It does have a WEP, so here's one where if you have WEP, if you have WPA2, just an open network, there's no security at all. So it gives you some basic framework. So you kind of have to know a little bit about what your network is set up at home. It's probably this one. You know, if you're at home, it's probably this one. Or if you're in a dorm room, if you have your own router, you know, sending out signals to your stuff, then it's probably this. So for me, this is what I'm going to use. Now, all these little hashtags, pound signs, they're actually called octothorpes. They are comment. So all of these are commented out. Everything in this whole piece of code, other than down here, is commented out. So you pick the one that you think is right for you, which is probably the WPA2 secured. And you can leave this one because this is just, you know, a header telling you which one this one is. But these you need to erase. All right, and you can actually see that now it recognizes these little curly braces here. And here you put your network details. So this one is the name of your network, whatever it is. You know, if you go down to your wireless interface on your PC, it'll name the network. So whatever your network name is, and then the password. So notice there's no username, so it's not like your username and a password. This is the name of the network itself. This is the password for that network. I don't want to show you all of my usernames and passwords, so I'm going to move that off the screen. You do leave the quotes, so I will show you that. You do leave the quotes in here, so you put your network name here. So let's put mine in. Hopefully I remember the right one and the password for it. I think that's it. And then you save this. If you don't uncomment it, then you put the username password in and nothing's actually going to happen. All right. So that should be saved now. In fact, it shows today's date is being modified, so that looks good. All right, now back over here, there's all our files for the blaster. Over here, we can eject this and go back to our Raspberry Pi. All right, so if all goes well, now you have to be really careful with these because they're super fragile, and if you put them in crooked, it'll snap them in half. This is already plugged in, so you already get a little power light. See, it won't fit in here with the USBs attached, so I'll have to rethink that or cut some slots in it maybe. So you have to give it a little bit of time because there's no indication here of when it's actually connected. Oh, here we go. Got some activity. When it's finished connecting, now it's looking like it's trying. All right, I think it is now connected to my network. So if it is, what you can do now is actually go in. Let's go back to here. And now this is going to be a little bit different step depending on exactly what you have installed on your computer, your PC. So if you have something like Skype or Adobe, there's a couple of pieces of software that install the Bonjour server. And if you have that on your PC, then you can type octopi.local and it should connect to this Raspberry Pi that we have. Now, if you have more of them, then I don't know what will happen, but you have to know their individual addresses. If you don't have Bonjour services, then you can install it pretty easily. Usually you don't install it, you install something that installs it. So like iTunes will install this in the background. And Adobe and Skype, those will install it for you. So if you have any of those, you already have this. So it's trying to set up a connection on my computer, which is no longer plugged into it. All of these cables over here are either power cables or the one USB that's not connected to anything. It will be connected to the printer. Maybe we can go ahead and plug that in. Now, let's see if we can get all these on here. This USB is actually going, oh, we didn't get it to connect. We'll have to check again. It's going to connect to the printer. It will power the motherboard of the printer. You can stop that by covering one of the pins inside here. I haven't done that. So, well, what happened here? Let's try and see if it will connect with HTTP. I may just go off to the side over here and check to see if it actually connected to my network. Let's see. So what I'm doing right now off to the side is going into my router to see if it shows it on there. So it does act like it's there, or it was there. I don't know if it's still there. So let's see. Let me try this. Thank you, Wizard Guiding Through. Next. So it is going to have a default username and password. I don't remember what they are. Actually, it looks like now you have to fill out something. So you have to create a username and password. Let me make something so that I don't. Let's see. Let's make something that I might stand a chance of remembering. Okay, so I just put in a username and a password. It thought they were okay. And now, oh, and at the very bottom of that, you can disable the access control. There's two buttons like this. There's a red one that says disable access control and a green one that says enable it. So you could disable that. The downside to that is that means that anybody that happens to run across your printer, however they get to it on the internet, could come in and send G-code to it. Basically, they would find your Raspberry Pi, send G-code to the Raspberry Pi, which would send stuff to your printer. So you probably do want to have a username and password on it. Here, usage trackage. So this is going to send data up to octoprint.org. You can either choose to enable that or disable that, and you can always change it later. So we'll disable it for now. Here, this is the Raspberry Pi going and checking basically Google's server 8.8.8.8.8, or how many 8s there are, to see if it's connected to the internet. So you can test it. It's reachable. So basically the Raspberry Pi is connected to the internet. There are some things where it wants to download an update or whatever that it'll try to do, and then it's not connected to the internet, or it doesn't have a good connection, and it will just take longer than it needs to. So I'm going to enable this. It's fine. It is going to, whatever time period you put in here, so the default is 15 minutes, go and check this server to see, am I still connected to the internet? Basically, it's going to, every 15 minutes, ask Google, am I still connected to the internet? So you can either disable or enable that. I'll enable that one. So there are a list, all kinds of plugins for Octoprint. And so you might want to install some of them at some time. Now, the set that comes with Octoprint is pretty robust, but there are some that sit there and watch maybe you have a camera on your Octoprint. It will sit there and watch the camera and check to see if it is if the print has failed. So there's actually, I can't remember the name of it, but it will actually go in and check using artificial intelligence and your camera stream to check and see if your print has failed because it's looking for, strings everywhere or something like that. So there's all these kind of plugins. But there are some of them that don't work very well, or it might just be malicious to begin with. Who knows? So there's a blacklist out there of plugins that are known to have problems. I'm going to enable that just so I don't accidentally install one that's known to have a problem. But it will make it also difficult on unknown plugins that may be fine, but they got blacklisted because they're not approved or whatever. I don't know. So I'm going to enable it though. I'm not going to install many plugins, I don't think. Here you have to describe your printer. So you can give it a name. This is our Ender 3. You can give it a whatever model you want. I'm going to leave that same. It's rectangular. The origin is in the lower left. It does have a heated bed. It doesn't have a heated chamber. We haven't put a box around it or anything. It's actually a little more than 200 by 200. It is probably 220 by 220. We'll put that in there. The height is, I don't know, 300, I think. I think it's 300. I don't plan on printing anything all that tall. I'll leave it at 200 for now. You could have a custom bounding box if you wanted to. This is just going to show the the custom size of a maximum, like if you were printing a giant cube, how big would that cube be? All right. This one's telling me I shouldn't, even though I'm kind of monitoring it with Octoprint, I shouldn't just leave it unattended. You shouldn't make your Octoprint instance available for everyone on the internet, so don't go give out your IP address for the thing and the password. You do have to be, so I can't take my phone, go to town somewhere and check on the Octoprint. So one of the ways it's set up right now anyway is that I have to be on my local network in order to actually connect to this thing. You can open up your network and broadcast this out. I'm not going to even bother to show you how to do that because you really need to know what you're doing in order to make that a secure thing. So you really can only use Octoprint on a local network. So when you're at home, your printers are at home, you can be another part of your house and monitoring your printer, maybe even outside. But once you leave your local network, it's not going to be able to connect to it. You can support, and then we can finish. All right. Let's see. All right, so then you get this screen. Let's turn the printer on. I'm not actually connected to it right now, so right now there's only one USB cable going from here. I do have it plugged into the front of the printer. And it should auto connect to that one printer because there's not any others out there on this Raspberry Pi. So it did. Sometimes you'll get an error. I can't remember what the error is. Can't remember the name of it, but sometimes you'll get an error that what has happened is you have changed something on the printer's firmware. Maybe you updated the firmware or whatever, and you didn't reset the EEPROM. EEPROM. And it will give you an error at this point that it can't connect because, and I can't remember something. I don't even remember if it tells you the firmware is out of date or what, but it's an error like that. And all you have to do is go back to your printer and go through the menu for, I think it's Control. Let me check. Control and reset EEPROM. Click that and then try to connect again over here, and it should connect. Other errors mean, things like maybe you didn't plug in the USB cable or whatever. I don't know. So now at this point, let's go ahead and do something on the printer. Let's preheat to PLA temperature so you can see what's going to happen here. So over here, I've got a graph of the temperature for the bed and the nozzle. So the red is the bed and the blue is the nozzle. And you can kind of see it recognized that I set their set points up here. I don't know if they show up very pale on your screen, but on mine they're a little bit paler for the set points, and then the darker, the more saturated colors are the actual temperature. So you can kind of see them rising to meet those set points. And I could see this on my phone or any device that's connected to my local network. I could go to either the octoprint.local, which for some reason still isn't working for me, or the IP address of the Raspberry Pi over here, which I happen to know, and just type that octoprint.local, whichever one it is, and you'll get to this screen. It's reading files off of the SD card on the printer. These are files that are already on there. You can look down here at the bottom. You can upload a file, and you can upload to the SD card on the printer. Now this upload to SD on the printer is incredibly slow, and I don't know why you would ever really do that, but what I do, I mainly use Octoprint for monitoring, not for sending files to the printer, because I don't have that many printers, and it's simpler for me to just take the SD card out of the printer, put the G-code files on there. I've got all the files I want to print, and from here the file is already on the printer. I'm not having to stream to the printer or anything like that. I don't have to upload to the SD card, which does work, but it might take an hour to upload a large. In fact, I think I did this one right here. So this is a big one, 14 megabytes. This is the one that printed both of these things, the grips for our DL44, and it took over an hour to upload. I just wanted to see how long it would take, and it took a long time, but it did get on there. It just took forever. So if you have a larger file, maybe one of these, you know, a couple of 100 kilobyte files wouldn't be terribly long to upload, but I just wouldn't do it. You can upload here, but this is going to upload not to the printer, and it's going to stream information to the Raspberry Pi. You actually can install a slicer. You can install a version, I think version 15 of Cura, one of the older versions, into here and actually slice. You can open up your phone, slice a model, you know, download it from Thingiverse, slice it on your phone. Well, not on your phone, but tell the Raspberry Pi to slice it, and then send it all to the printer. There's a really good chance that it's going to take a long time, and it's going to have a little bit of trouble streaming to the printer, and you might end up with zits on the printer. So you have to make sure you have a actually really nice connection to your printer, wireless, or to your Raspberry Pi, and your Raspberry Pi to your printer has to. You have to have one of the. You can actually kind of see some control system stuff going on here, where it's approaching. That's our PID tuning, trying to hone in on the actual temperature. You've got some other things up here. So if I had a webcam, it would show whatever the webcam sees. I don't have one connected to the Raspberry Pi right now. I think on Friday we should be able to do that. You can actually look at the G code. I don't have any loaded right now for it to be visible. Here you can actually see what's going on as far as the printer itself. So this is basically it's reporting the current temperature of the nozzle in the bed. This is kind of nice. So if you do have a webcam, this is one way you can make really nice time-lapse videos of the print. And so you'll see this on a lot of videos where somebody basically records their print as it's happening every, you know, whatever many seconds you want. But you have to have a webcam hooked up to it for that to work. So at this point, I could upload a file, or I could pick one of these that's already on the SD card on the printer. I think this is the one that came with it actually. So you can pick that. I don't know if I want to actually print it, but here it is. Is it ready to go? Let's see if we can see the. I don't know if it'll show me the layers. No. All right. I should be able to hit print. Our printer would start. It's already heated up actually, so it would just do its homing routine, whatever G code is built into the startup of here, and then it would go to print. I think this is a little dog, if I remember right. I don't remember what it actually is, but at this point you could have done this on an iPad or your phone or your PC without actually having your printer physically next to wherever all these devices are. So this is really good if you keep your printer off somewhere else, or maybe you have a whole suite of printers and you keep them off in another room. Then you don't have to constantly go over to the room to check on them. You can check on them right here. If you put the camera, the webcam, or our Raspberry Pi camera on them, then you can even remotely view what's going on with the printers. Without having to constantly go and check on them. So it's a neat, all of it's free. Obviously the Raspberry Pi is not free, but the only thing that you actually have to have is a Raspberry Pi and an SD card to go with it, which some kits, when you do have to be careful, some kits you buy for Raspberry Pis don't actually have the SD card in the kit. You have to have a power supply or a way to power the Raspberry Pi. We're not powering it off the printer, at least not right now. And then the USB cable to go from your printer to the Raspberry Pi, which you probably already have because it's the same cable that you would connect your printer to your computer if you were going to upload firmware or something like that. All right, so I think that gets us Octoprint sort of set up. So we have some more stuff to do. Hopefully next time I'll have a case for this. Hopefully we'll have a camera that we can actually put a webcam on our printer so we can see what's going on. We'll come back to this guy. He should be all painted with this guy. There he is. should all be painted, and then we'll do the next step. So I won't go past this step of putting these really light colors on here. And then what else are we going to do? I think, let's check what is next. I kind of think we're doing some SolidWorks actually. Let's see. Yes, so next time on Friday, I'm going to be in SolidWorks, and I'm going to do a thermal analysis of the hot end. So all the 4 or 5 parts of the hot end. I'm not going to model them live. I've already modeled them. In fact, I'll see if I can find my models and give them to you if you want to do the same thing, assuming you have SolidWorks. I guess I could save them as step files or something. Actually, I may have done them in Fusion 360. We'll be in either Fusion 360 or SolidWorks. I can't remember which one. And we will do a thermal analysis so you can see the effects of having a fan blowing on the cool side of the hot end versus not, see where the heat goes, where it's generated. Also maybe get a better idea of how the pieces fit together. And we'll work on these guys some more. Maybe we'll work on this. I don't know if I'll have these printed in wood or not, wood feel, but we'll see. That's what we're planning on Friday. Then we go into even more down the rabbit hole. So next week we've got a SKR board. So we're going to put the SKR mini board in our printer. We actually change the motherboard out of the printer, put a new one in. See how that works. Some other stuff like that. So we'll see you on Monday, or actually Friday. We'll see you on Friday.